So what if I told you guys there were actually 5 visionary men who predicted Bitcoin more than 5 decades ago? We've made videos in the past talking about Buckminster Fuller, Henry Ford, as well as people like Nikola Tesla, but someone who we haven't talked about is actually Thomas Edison. So to talk about all of these great men who predicted Bitcoin and how an energy money would actually change our society in the future, I've actually brought on a special guest, Andrew Myers, to discuss all of this and more, because this is a topic he recently covered in one of his brilliant articles that has just been released in the Bitcoin Times. So without further ado, let's get straight in this interview with Andrew. So today I'm joined by a man who's written a phenomenal essay talking about Bitcoin and the energy revolution it's going to create. And I thought the best place to start today's chat was to actually talk about one of the first people who ever predicted Bitcoin. And that was a man who said the following over 50 years ago about Bitcoin.
Because now I'll have to talk about something which will be one of the very big new realizations by 2000 AD, which will be a realistic scientific accounting system of what is wealth.
So, Andrew, let's talk a little bit about Buckminster Fuller and why his vision for a global energy grid actually relates to Bitcoin mining.
I think what's most interesting about Buckminster Fuller, he was a futurist, had many sort of ideas for how the future would unfold. A couple of concepts that I liked, that I have liked from him. One is that he has this idea that you should kind of build technologies that make the old technology obsolete. Mm-hmm. And I think Bitcoin's done that in a very peaceful way. The second is when he talks about global energy markets, I think it's very interesting, kind of thinking like if the planet can kind of coalesce around a single energy standard, then potentially that could bring world peace. Like we're all kind of operating then in the same economy on the same energy grid. And we have sort of less conflict like we're currently experiencing today.
Yeah, let's take that a little bit further, because Henry Ford was also another visionary who talked about how Bitcoin could create global peace. For anyone who's maybe new, who we've clickbaited onto the video and they're not a Bitcoiner, maybe we can take that a step further and walk the listeners through how a global energy standard could create global peace.
Yeah, I think I would imagine that Fuller probably got some inspiration from Ford and Edison, even 50 years prior. So it was initially Henry Ford's idea to kind of go back to sound money to effectively stop bankers from funding wars. And then sort of recruited his friend Thomas Edison to devise a plan in order to create this commodity-backed money or energy-backed money. Yeah, super fascinating plan. They had various ideas, but one of them was to use a hydro dam in Alabama called Muscle Shoals, and as they're minting or as they're generating the energy, also be minting currency based on the energy generated. So a super fascinating idea. I think it's really just the idea. It's not necessarily the idea of a global energy grid that they were exploring, I think, to sort of end all wars, as Ford stated. I think it was more of the idea of like a revival of sound money and taking power out of the bankers who tend to create problems in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it. Yeah, so that's a great point you make about, sound money. And I actually want to take this chance to read a quote from an essay that's going to be dropped in the energy edition of the Bitcoin Times. I don't have it with me right now. I do have edition 3, 4, and 5 with me, but I'm pretty pumped to see your essay dropped in that one. And you drop a banging quote. It goes something like this. Bitcoin is energy-backed sound money, built to be a reliable store of value, super fast and efficient medium of exchange, and an unchanging measurement of price or unit of account aligned perfectly with society's ambitions for abundant, sustainable energy. Let's talk a little bit more about how Bitcoin mining can create abundant, sustainable energy for us.
Yeah, so Bitcoin mining is obviously one piece of the puzzle, but you have Bitcoin more broadly as money. Something very interesting about Bitcoin mining in particular is that it's sort of this type of load that's very large and fairly agnostic to location. So when you have sort of remote renewable energy generation, wind power, solar power, and that generation is intermittent, meaning that you can't predict or you can't sort of control when it's producing energy. It's just based on when the wind blows or when the sun shines. That creates volatility in the market. That creates sort of distortions on the power grid. But if you pair that with a Bitcoin miner, you can then sort of modulate that output by, when there is demand on the grid, you can let that power flow to the grid. And when there's not demand on the grid, then the Bitcoin miner absorbs that excess energy and is minting Bitcoin, is minting sound money in doing so. So, I mean, the sound money aspect of store of value, like the way I break it down in the essay, is really the store of value, I think, is ultimately shifting it's sort of leveling the playing field, right? So instead of, central banks and people very near to the central bank being able to make economic decisions on what type of energy should be produced or what the cost of energy should be or how much energy should be created, that then levels the playing field to where every innovator, entrepreneur, person can decide what to do with energy and how to use energy in their own life. And I think that itself is very exciting. Then you have the medium of exchange. So with the medium of exchange, the way power markets currently operate, the electrical energy is being sent in real time. You have to maintain a real-time balance of supply and demand in order to actually keep the lights on, to keep the grid stable. However, the money is actually lagging by hours, days, weeks, months. So Bitcoin as a sort of a real-time, super fast medium of exchange ends up speeding up the payments. So I think about this in terms of like the time value of money. And with the time value of money, I kind of think of that in like three categories. You've got sort of the opportunity cost if you're not getting paid for weeks or months. You've got inflation obviously happening in that time period. And then you also have counterparty risk. So for every day or week or month that you haven't been paid for energy that you delivered, the risk with your counterparty and like your paranoia of whether or not they will pay you continues to ratchet up. So when you have sort of those components of time value of money, you're not actually getting paid at the time you deliver the energy, yet that supply and demand has to balance in real time. It distorts the market altogether. It's hard to make economic decisions in a real-time market without real-time money. So that is obviously super exciting. And kind of tying it back to Bitcoin mining with the unit of account use case. So, I mean, I think we're all kind of in this thinking that Bitcoin ultimately becomes global money. But I think what's interesting now is that, take the Bitcoin mining use case, for example. Bitcoin mining is putting a price on surplus energy. So, I mean, it's often measured in dollars, but sometimes measured in Bitcoin. But really what it's doing is it's already creating a unit of account for something that didn't have a market for it to begin with. So I think that's really exciting. And then as Bitcoin adoption grows in the energy industry, global in other industries and other day-to-day transactions, then ultimately it should become that unit of account and really a more accurate price signal.
Now, I wanted to quickly interrupt this interview with Andrew Myers to let you know a little bit more about Andrew Myers' most recent article that we are actually discussing today. This is being released in the 6th edition of the Bitcoin Times. This year, the Bitcoin Times is releasing the Energy Edition, and Andrew Myers was one of the 6 writers who we selected to write an essay in the Bitcoin Times. So again, if you want to read this thing, it is online for free in the Bitcoin Times Substack, so you can find that in the link in the description down below. But don't forget, we are actually running a special sale on the collectible. So if you want to read Andrew's essay alongside other great essays by people like Marty Bent, as well as Gideon Powell, and of course, Alex Svetsky, you can get 21,000 sats off the Bitcoin Times collectible if you use a promo code Mikic. That's my last name. Very easy to spell. I know that. I've spelt it out on screen for you guys so you can't go wrong, but definitely check out the Bitcoin Times. Only 2,100 copies printed every single year. You can pick your favorite number to collect every year. I'm sorry to say you cannot get edition 309 because that is the one that I'm collecting every single year. So with all that said, let's get back into this interview with Andrew. Yeah, it's interesting. And when we're talking about Bitcoin mining, I'm always fascinated about the geopolitical implications of Bitcoin mining. So we see nations like El Salvador investing $1 billion into mining. I think Oman, a Middle Eastern country, did something very similar recently, investing a shit ton of money into mining. And the Kingdom of Bhutan got exposed earlier this year for mining Bitcoin since 2019. So I'd be really interested about your thoughts of Bitcoin mining more at a geopolitical level. Do you see countries like Bhutan and others in Southeast Asia, like China, actually racing ahead with Bitcoin mining? Or how do you see that kind of unfolding? Are there countries that are going to try and hamstring themselves, like some of the regulations we do see in America? Or how do you think that's going to shake out?
Yeah, we don't have any direct knowledge of various nation states making these investments. However, the public investment with El Salvador, very interesting. Had the chance to talk to the Volcano Energy team a couple of years ago or a couple of weeks ago, and really like what they're doing. I think with that, there's an opportunity to kind of reform that power market in El Salvador, which I'm excited to see some progress there. And then I think some of the other countries that you mentioned, obviously in the Middle East, there's been a lot of public announcements around Bitcoin mining investment, and maybe that's sort of public-private partnerships. But ultimately, the governments seem to be accumulating Bitcoin for strategic reasons. I tend to think similar things are probably happening in Russia, probably also happening in China. My guess is that the mining ban in China was more of nationalizing the mining industry than actually banning it. So I think some left, but I think a lot stayed. And now that Bitcoin's going into probably the coffers of the Communist Party. Just a hypothesis.
I don't think it's a wild one either. I've seen lots of people make similar hypotheses. And I mean, if you look at I don't know how accurate these Bitcoin mining geographical distribution maps are, but I saw one that showed that, in September 2021, so only 4 or 5 months after the ban, there was a bunch of hash rate that turned back online in China. I don't know whether those are accurate or not, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, hard to tell with VPNs, but yeah, I don't think it really matters though. End of the day, it's it's providing network security. Bitcoin adoption is growing. I think the game theory is playing out as expected.
It is day by day, hash by hash. The game theory continues to intensify. Andrew, I think you found Bitcoin earlier than myself in particular, but earlier than most. I'd love to hear what actually got you into the Bitcoin space. So what did you think of that short and sharp little highlights reel with the one and the only Andrew Myers? I do have some good news for you guys. If you've made it to the end of this short little video, the full recording and my full interview with Andrew Myers is being posted over on the Money Matters YouTube channel. That is going to be one of the last videos that I do on Money Matters. So if you do want to check out that full video, you can click the link right there. And with all that said, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this one and what you want me to make a video on next here on this YouTube channel. I'm going to be making a whole lot more videos, so stay tuned for the year that is going to be 2024. With all that said, I'll see you all in the next one.